Hello, this is our AS435 setup of the 737-800 for cold starts. First, we're going to want to hit New Flight. I'll go back. New Flight here. We're going to want to look for the Boeing 737-800X 4K. We're going to Customize. We're going to want to make sure Start with Engines Running is unchecked because we want to start it cold. Real world weather and real world date and time will likely want on unless otherwise specified in class. For weight and balance, we're going to want to grab whatever flight plan we're using. In this case, I'm going to be demonstrating the Prescott to LAX flight, Clipper 1230 here. And our block fuel we're needing is 11,450. So you're going to want to drag this and get it as close to your block fuel as you can get. This is fine to be a little lower, a little higher, but for the case of the cold start, you want it pretty close. That way you aren't waiting for the fuel truck to load exactly how much you want for a long period of time. Okay, and then you're going to hit done. Now we're going to first you're going to want to search whatever airport you are going to. For this case, it is Prescott. You're going to double click that airport, and you can either use this list and find whatever gate you want to use, or you can click on a runway. But since we're doing cold starts, for this example, I'm going to use the terminal space here in Prescott. Obviously, in real life, you wouldn't have a 737 come into Prescott, but for this case, I'm using Prescott as an example because we all here have used Prescott many times. Now I'm going to hit confirm after I've selected gate 3, and I'm going to click start flight. It's going to take a while for this to load, so let it load. While this is loading, I'm grabbing my flight plan to be used, the advanced checklist, which I should put in Canvas pretty soon. And this is the checklist I'll be going through line by line. I also have grabbed my Navigraph and I've put in the flight plan here and grabbed mostly the information I need for now. For this, it's just going to be cold start, and I will have it all the way up to pushback and the start of the taxi, and kind of showing you how to do that. For the case of anything past that, that will be further in the class. You can see I have the Winsky to departure here loaded in the airport info and an airport diagram. And I can use this to reference for any of my fixes, so I'll have to confirm. We're going to have to wait for this to load still. Perfect. Now, for the sake of this example, I purposely chose it dark. That way everything will be a little more visible once we have the lights on. But for the checklist, we will first go through the electronic flight bag here. If you need it to get brighter, you can come here, customize and configure, and it should be in visual effects right here. EFB brightness and the third tab over. And I'm going to set that to day. That way this is way more visible. Okay. First checklist, pre-flight, electronic flight bag. This is going to be going to the configure and customize, hardware, and we're going to the nose wheel axis. We're going to set that to yaw, and you can confirm by rotating your joystick left and right for rudder that the nose wheel axis is now also set to your rudder. This will allow us to taxi without you having to hold the tiller here. The next thing we're going to do is go to Variants and Display, go to Systems, and we're going to switch on the multi-mode receiver. This is going to pull up the multi-mode receiver instead of the traditional dials here, where you would usually have to tune in using the dials and you'd have the auto tune for your GPS. But for the multi-mode receiver, you manually tune, and I'll show that a little once I actually power up. The next line item is EFB variance. So still in this display variance. And then we're going to auto flight here. And then where it says LPV approach capability, we're turning that on. Okay, next thing we're gonna do, go back to setting and features, realism, yoke movement right here, and we're turning this off. Because of how fidgety the joysticks can be at times, if I turn this on, there we go. It's pretty still here, but sometimes it could fidget a little, and if it ever moves at all, it tends to disconnect the autopilot mid-flight for no reason. So turning this off will mean if you move your yoke, it will not disconnect the autopilot, which realistically it would, but for the sake of simplicity and the fact that our joysticks are a little fidgety, we need to turn this off. That way we keep the autopilot on when we need it on. Next thing we're going to do is go back home. We're going to failures, and we're going to click disable random failures. This is just to double check and make sure that no failures happen mid-flight. Okay, next one is ground services, and we are going to set chocks and open the forward entry, service, forward cargo, aft service, and aft entry. The next thing we're going to do is attach the jetway. For the sake of press kit, we don't have to attach a jetway because, let me go to the third person view here, because this is not an actual jetway. It pulls up the ramp and the rolling stairs. So we will not be rolling in the jetway for this airport. But if we were at a jetway, we would click flight, then go to ground handling window right here, and we would click attach jetway. And when we remove the jetway, it will also be in this ground handling menu. Okay, I'm heading back home. The next thing we have is EFB fuel payload. So back in the main menu, you go to fuel, weight, and balance, payload, and we're gonna enter our block fuel. You can see that even though we entered our block fuel at the start, it's going to be a lot less than what we originally put in. So I'm once again looking back at our flight plan, double checking, 11,451 is our block fuel. So for simplicity, I'm going to put 11,500 here just to keep it simple. And it should load. This is what we actually have. This is what we require. The next thing we're doing, we can go back, fuel truck. We're calling the fuel truck to come in and start refueling our aircraft. It takes a few seconds for them to come. If you have audio on, you should be able to hear them call you and say that they're refueling and when they finish refueling. Okay, now we're going to the payloads. For the sake, we're grabbing our checklist again, and we are going to, for this, we're just going to use total payload here, our estimated total. That's the fuel truck talking. Here, 26,700 is our estimated payload. This is what we're going to put here, payload total, 26,700. It should auto-populate the seats and any cargo. Our next line item on this checklist is EFB start flight leg. This ensures that your payload actually gets loaded for this case. And the next thing, and should be one of the last line items here for the EFB, is ground service, connect GPU. Next, I'm turning the light back on so we can see. We want the parking brake pulled up like this. If it's down, it isn't engaged. You need it pulled up. When power is engaged, you'll also see a red light here. Oh, sorry. Okay, next is battery. We're gonna come up here, and you can see here that the battery is off. We're going to turn it on by flicking it down and guard. Keep it guarded and keep it on. Next, we're going to ensure that the standby power is on and guarded. It should be set all the way to the right, which is auto and guarded. The next thing we can do is connect ground power. I'm now going to turn off the flashlight, and you can see everything is more visible. I'm going to brighten everything up, that way it's a little easier to see, hopefully. Now we can come up to the AC DC meter here, set it to the battery. That way we're monitoring the battery, and we're going to be setting it to ground power because we're currently using the GPU. Now, left and right IRS, we're going to look up a little. The left IRS, we're going to want to set that to nav, and the right IRS, we're going to want to set it to nav. It will automatically align, and as it aligns, we're going to want to put in our present position in the FMS. That is a later line item. It is aligning on its own, and we'll leave that be for now. Next one is cabin util, which should be on, and IFE/passenger seats are also on. Emergency lights are here. We're going to want to slap those armed and guard it. No smoking, we'll go slightly down and put those to on. Exterior lights, we'll want to set them as required. For now, I'll just turn on the logo light. And we're going to want to make sure anti-collision stays off. Next is window heat as required. Window heat is up here. We're going to want to put all 4 on. Okay. And now we're on FMS airport and gate. Because there isn't actually gate information for Prescott, we aren't going to put a gate in, but we are going to still use our left GPS information. So you guys should have the box, so you shouldn't have to click this, but for this case, I'm going to hit FMC. Just double checking. Position initiation. And we're going to want to give it a reference airport, KPRC, reference airport. Now we need to set our IRS position. We're going to hit next page, grab GPS left, make sure it's in the scratch board and that matches, previous page, and put it into our IRS position. We will pause the FMS setup for now. That is all we need to do. I'm going to start putting all these lights on, that way everything looks more visible. Okay. Probe heat as required. It isn't really cold enough right now to be worth shoving the probe heat on before we've really started our engine, so I'll keep that off. Now, engine hydraulic pumps. We want to make sure engine 1 and engine 2 hydraulic pumps are on, and that both electrical pumps are off, which they are by default. Fuel pumps. We'll go to the fuel panel here on the left. All of them should be up and off. Trim air. We're going to want to go to the top right. This is the air panel. Trim air is directly in the center of this air panel, and we'll put that on. Isolation valve. That is directly below the air panel, and this should, here, let me move my camera a little. That way you can see this better. I'm currently just using my arrow keys to move my camera rather than the preset views. isolation valve, it should be all the way down and open. Left and right recirc fans are set to auto. And now we can set our pressurization. So for now, auto and whatever we have filed for top of climb can be good for now, because we don't have a clearance, so we're expecting 34,000. Sorry, I should probably, this is our flight plan. I just scrolled down. Top of climb, you can see that we're going to be cruising at 34,000 through all these fixes. Or you could look at the filed altitude. So 34,000 is our flight altitude. For now, we can keep landing altitude alone, because we'll put that in midair. Next line item, I'm going to go back to my captain's side here. Oh, there we go. The next line item here is fasten seatbelts, and we'll set that to auto. Now fuel loaded. If you haven't gotten the audio cue, you can check here, fuel, and it should no longer have actual and required. It should just show you fuel as what you have. You can also double check down here on the bottom right, and both of these added up is of course 11,500. So that should be good. Now it says IFR clearance received in brief. For most of the class, we're going to be using default what our flight plan is as we filed. But for some scenarios, we may give you guys specific IFR clearances with limits and what we actually want you to do. But for this case, I'm using just our filed flight plan. Okay. FMS setup and route verified. This is a lot of the class, of course, using the box. We should still be on this position initialization page, and we'll click route. It should auto-populate Prescott because we have already put that as our origin. We'll put it as our origin. Destination. We'll go back to our plan, make sure, yes, LAX is where we're going. KLAX. Flight number, for this flight, we are Clipper 1230, Papa Alpha Alpha 1230. Papa Alpha Alpha 1230. Runway, we can also, once again, look at this, or whatever METAR we may get, and we're expecting 21 left. So we can put 21 left, and it'll auto-populate it. We're gonna hit next page, and this will be our route information. We're gonna first want to load our departure. So departure arrival page, departure. We are expecting, once again, grabbing off our flight plan here, we are expecting the Winsky 2 with the transition of Mumpty. It's not on the first page. We're going to have to hit next page. Transition Mumpty. Make sure it's selected. And we can go back to route. We hit next page and confirm. Winsky 2 Mumpty. 2 Mumpty. The next fix on our flight plan is Gable. Golf, Alpha, Bravo, Bravo, Lima. It is direct to Gable, and that should be our fix for the Hollywood 1 arrival. So we're now going to go arrival for LAX, Angel 4, no, we're going to want the Hollywood 1. So we're going to hit next page until we find it. Oh, perfect. Page 2, Hollywood 1. And we are going to Gable for that Gable transition. Most of the time, you don't want to load the approach until you've actually been given either that METAR or ATC has told you that there's a specific approach that you're going to be using. For now, I'm going to keep the approach empty. Route. Now we're going to want to check it's ending at Cebu. And if I open Navigraph, right here. We can confirm that the Hollywood one, starting at Gable, will end at Seaview. And it's expect ILS or RNAV 25 left approach, which is a good indicator that we'll likely end up using that. Okay. Once you have finished your route initialization, you can hit activate, and you and your co-pilot will obviously want to look over this before you hit execute. But since this is myself, I'm going to hit execute. Everything looks good. And you can see immediately it populated this information. For now, I'm going to keep this here, and I will confirm the route after I have completed FMS setup. Performance initialization, ground weight. You can either grab this from our flight plan, or since we already have the exact information, you can use this, takeoff weight. 130,400. You're gonna have to round this up. So this could be 130.4. 130.4. Now, cruise altitude, once again, boxes are required. You need to fill in these boxes. We're expecting flight level 340. You can do this. You could also do flight level 340, or you can do 34,000. And it will always populate flight level 340 for you. Next, I'm going to go to the cruise wind. I'm grabbing my flight plan, scrolling down until I hit top of climb. Once I'm at top of climb, I want the wind here. It's 289er at 19 knots. And I also want to mark the fact that it's minus 16 Celsius. So for that wind, 289er at 19er, we're going to type in 289er slant 19er because there's a slant in between them. Now for outside air temperature, it will default to Fahrenheit if you only put the temperature. I'll give you an example of this. We need 16 Celsius minus, but for this, I only have 16. So it's gonna act like it's 16 Fahrenheit. To correct this, I'm gonna hit minus 16 Charlie. That should give us Celsius, as seen here. Next, we have our reserves. Once again, grabbing our flight plan, scrolling to the top, and we're going to be looking at our FinRes plus alternate. And that will be around 4,500 because we have to round up here. 4.5 for 4,500. And cost index. Still looking at this flight plan, our cost index for our cruise is 5. Immediately, you can hear it ding at you. Sorry, I just wanted to double check. It's telling you to execute. You can hit next page, confirm whatever tolerances you want to put in. We usually keep this default. I don't think we're going to ever mess with performance limits for this class. Okay, you'd want to double check with your partner. Once again, does this all look good? Looks good to me, so I'm executing. Now it says actual performance. We're going to go to N1 limits. Now, there's another thing. You can see that our N1's above 100. We would not want to do that. But if we look at our chart, there is no approved, let me double check. Oh, there is. Okay, I stand corrected. So there is D takeoff 1 with bleeds on for 2-1 left, dry, calm wind. Right here. So we do have some D-rated takeoff modes. I'm going to use normal takeoff for this example because that's once again what the majority of what we're going to be doing is. But this is where you would insert any deration or any flex temperatures. For now, we're going to the takeoff page. On default, we use 5 degrees of flaps. You see how it auto-populated these? We do not want to insert these until all information from this page is done. CG, we are going to want to grab that from our electronic flight bag. Our takeoff CG is 22.4. So 22.4. It's telling trim 5. This is a good time to set that trim to whatever it's going to tell you. That is set to 5. Now next page, runway wind. You'll either get a METAR or you'll use the METAR on this page of our flight plan here. Looks like it's on page 12 of this specific flight plan, but it could be plus or minus a few depending on how many pages of legs there are. As seen, we have a wind of 200 at 6 knots being reported. So once again, 200, slant, because there's a slant in this information, 6 knots. Now, we can also put our outside air temperature, which is being reported at 10 Celsius. So it's on the right side, so we want to put the slant first, 10 Celsius. For now, I'm going to leave runway slope and runway heading information empty. This is also where you would put runway condition for dry, wet, and any other condition that the runway may be in. Okay, now that all the information applied is inserted, we can now load our V1, our V rotate, and V2 speeds. For reference, so I don't have to go back to this page, I'm putting V2 into the IAS mock window for future use. These are just normal V2 speed with nothing added. We are now set up with the FMS for takeoff. I'm going to put our legs page here and our climb page here for takeoff as just preemptive setting up. You can see that our speed restriction is 250 at 10,000. That is our legal speed restriction. We cannot go above 250 knots below 10,000 feet. As the checklist says, FMS set, and we have to verify our route. To simplify this, I'm going to keep this legs page here for now, go to plan, and zoom out a little on the MFD. Now, I'm going to want to be doing a couple things. I want to confirm that the route looks correct on the MFD. I also want to confirm altitudes. Any restrictions or speed restrictions we want to be confirming here. I'm grabbing the Navigraph charts. These are our Jepson charts. First, I'm checking the Winsky 2. I'll be putting this in my other monitor and reading out a couple of the fixes as I go by. 5,800 is when we start our turn. That's correct. Expecting an interception. These are all just being loaded by the computer. You can see there's no other flight restriction past 5,800 until we hit the arrival procedure. I'm now grabbing the Hollywood 1 on my Navigraph charts, and I'll be confirming each of these. Hollywood below, at or below is what this means, flight level 320. You see that the number of speed is now big, which means it's a restriction. You must cross at 280 knots between flight level 240 and 300. Next is Avatar, no speed restriction, but between flight level 190 and flight 240. Still checking to make sure this looks correct. Onto day, 17,000 or above. Waddup, 15,000 or above. Neil, 14,000 or above. And then finally, Cebu, crossing restriction of 270 knots between 12,000 and 14,000. Of course, we have not loaded an approach, so that is our last fix that we are checking here. And it looked correct on that, so I'm confirming this back to the map and giving a normal range. You can see how Drake has been loaded on both of our VORs at different courses. You can see 176 is what's been loaded on my captain side, and we have 251 loaded on the co-pilot side, and you can see how it's visualizing that for you. If you're departing for some reason with nav other than FMS, this would be very useful information to make sure that you have something tuned properly. Okay, now that we have verified the route, we are good to set our stabilized trim, which we already should have set in our FMS setup, but this is to double check that you have set it up. Altimeter, once again going to the METAR, and we're going to set 3 different altimeter settings. Captain side PFD 3012, the standby instrument 3012, and for our, let me turn this up, for our co-pilot here, 3012. Altimeters have been set. Next is transponder and TCAS. We would of course have our IFR briefing. We would put in whatever transponder setting using these 4 dials here. And we want to set, I'm going to move my camera so you can actually see this, but we want to go from standby and go all the way to TA-RA. And you should see the flashing R. That means everything is working properly. I'm going back to my side. Comms nav set, and this is going to be, of course, you're going to want to set comms however you would like to use them. Now, here is our navs. You can see how instead of using dials like we do for the comms, we have a multi-mode receiver here. This is a little unique, but I'll give an example of how this would be used. ILS, of course. Let's say we need to tune in a random ILS. I'm going to just give retune 110.75 for the sake of it. But you type in 110.75 and it gives you that number. Same on both sides. Now the mode is very important because if you have VOR, GLS, or ILS. GLS is going to be used for your GPS approaches. It will turn to your LPV stuff once you have a high enough number, because below 500,000 is GLS frequencies. 500,000 and above is going to be your LPV frequencies. I will grab an example, well known probably to a lot of us. I'm grabbing the RNAV into runway 12. I will tune this in here. So with the multi-mode receiver, we need to tune this channel. This is WAS 49235. So GLS 49235. And we can turn it to the active. You see how it is switched to LPV? That is because this approach happens to have an LPV attached to it. Usually, it won't say LPV unless there is a specific LPV approach. Okay, I will grab another RNAV that should not have an LPV. I'll grab one from LAX this time, because they have a lot more GPS approaches into their airports. All of these have LPVs. Sorry. Okay. For the sake of the example, if you tune something that's not LPV, it will have your GLS remain in here, like it was before, like this, GLS. For this sake, I still have Drake tuned in, VOR mode 114.1, and it's still tuned in. Going back to the checklist, comms and navs would be set. APU. To turn on the APU, you turn it on, and then you're going to hold start for 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3, then let go. It switches back to on, it is spring loaded. We are now looking at the exhaust gas temperature, just waiting for it to come up, and then slowly come back down and stabilize. Once it is stabilized, and once the generator has synced to the APU, you can slap the APU gen on. Show this now. Okay, stabilized, synced. It will give you the blue light telling you are good to go. And you can see now that both APUs have been turned on for generators. We are also going to be turning on all engine and also APU bleeds. You can see all 3 are on in the down position. We are also going to want to monitor APU gen for our AC/DC meter, for any troubleshooting you guys may need. And we are good. If it did not switch off automatically, you can slap it off. But for this case, it was already off. Now that ground power is off, we are good to go back to the electronic flight bag and disconnect our GPU. Next is flight director. We're gonna put both sides flight directors on, confirm that they've come on our PFDs. Auto throttle remain off. Indicated airspeed V2 plus 15. Remember how I put the normal V2 into here? We're adding 15 for 155. Altitude bug. This is going to be the top of what you're cleared to. For this case, we're acting like we've been just cleared, climb via the Winsky 2, and we can look for a altitude, which is right here, top altitude. We are the Mumpty transition, so 10,000 is our top altitude. That is what we're going to be putting into our altitude bug. You should see the altitude bug to 10,000. Next is our runway heading. You can see the bank here. I don't know what exactly we want to do with this. That is going to be up to each operation. I'll keep it set to default for now. But for heading, we're taking off of runway 21 left. So we're going to want to set the runway heading, which is 211. Next, we're going to arm VNAV and LNAV. It's going to turn green, and it's going to show up here white. You can see that it's white here, and that both are green up on the MCP. Next, fuel flow switch. It's a little hard to find, but it's right here. Sorry about that. If that ever happens to you guys, you just go to Xpilot and you can disable Explain ATIS, but I just don't want audio playing in the background. There we go. Fuel flow switch, we're going to look here, reset, it should go to 0, and then go back to rate. Fuel used is at 0. Exactly what we want. Gears down, speed brake closed and down. Thrust should be set to 0. Once again, these are a little fidgety, so don't expect it to be perfect. Engine start levers are both the cutoff position. Now, we need to make sure that the IRS has been aligned. You shouldn't have been able to set up the FMS if the IRS was not aligned, but just in case, make sure that the yaw dampener isn't turned on until the IRS has been fully aligned. You can see here that it's aligned, we've told it where it is, it's nice and happy. Yaw damper, right here, it is on. Next, passenger's baggage boarded. For this case, you can end it early. It will do it naturally on its own. Your flight attendants will tell you everything is loaded, but just by closing the door and detaching the jetway, it automatically instantly loads all payload. Make sure it's all closed. Once the lights aren't blinking, they're all closed. If you need to look outside, it is Shift 4 to look outside, and you can see that all the doors have been shut. Shift 7 to go back in the... There we go. Your flight attendant radioed you in. And EFB ground services, we are now good to remove the chocks. Which for some reason, I might have double clicked this. We have removed chocks now. Next checklist, pushback and startup. The first part of this is putting on hydraulic pump 1. Hydraulic pump 1 is on. You should see the low pressure go away because it's electrically driven. Next, fuel pumps. We do not have any fuel in the center tank, so we are only putting the 4 fuel pumps for the wing tanks, 2 for each wing. Next, we're turning the anti-collision light on and turning position lights to steady. Auto throttle can now be armed, and we will be setting up the pushback. This is a very important concept because it's a little iffy. You're going to want to click this. This is the planning menu. For your pushback, you're going to want to receive a clearance requesting push and start, of course, and ATC will tell you which direction they want you to point. Either tail something or nose something is usually how it's given. Now I'm going to show you this. It's a little dark, but the planning menu makes it a little brighter. Yeah, there we are. Usually it will show nothing. Sometimes it will be preloaded. If it's preloaded, you can hit delete for delete segment. It's a Delta Echo Lima key on your keyboard, or you can click it there. So you move your mouse. If you hold click, you can move your camera around. If you scroll the mouse, you can turn the planning around in a circle. You can turn it back and forth. Now you can see at some point it shows green. If it shows green, that means it's possible. If it doesn't show green, it means that's an impossible route and it can't push you back in a normal fashion, and we'll have to turn it back and forth a few times. We want to make sure it's as smooth as possible, so we're going to want to give it that green. Oh, no, it doesn't want to do it. Okay. Whatever looks most natural is also a way. I guess I'll just show an example of how it's going to have to push back and forth a little. So once you found the point you want the aircraft to be pushed to, you click. That's all you have to do, click, and now it should be ready to plan another one. You can still do whatever you want with this one. So if you want to push straight back, for this example, let's say you're needed to push straight back and then turn, you can plan multiple legs. And it'll actually push this back once you do it. But for this, I'm going to be reasonable and I'm going to push myself back here. Now, once it's done, all you have to do is hit enter to accept the plan. Now, we are just simply going to click this button here. This calls the tow driver to drive up to the aircraft and attach. You're going to either highlight over this with your mouse or use audio. Once they tell you to push the parking brake off, you will push the parking brake off so that they can push you back. But for now, we just have to wait for him to drive up and pick us up. I use third person for this, that way you can kind of see it better. You have to wait for them to grab you and lift the aircraft up. Now, depending on the airport, you may want to push back before. Okay. Depending on the airport, you may want to push back as you start your engines, but some other airports will have you push back and then start your engines. You may even have to taxi with one engine and then start your second engine as you're taxiing. For the sake of this class, you can do whatever feels more natural to you. For this case, I'm going to start some of the engine startup as I'm getting pushed back for the sake of time. That way, this video isn't a couple hours long for no reason. You can see aircraft being lifted up. You'll see in the cockpit that you're being lifted up. Once it's done, you should see this and waiting for parking brake release. If you click this, it will cancel. Do not click this button. Now, we're going to click the parking brake off. The red light will extinguish, and he's telling you you're good for engine start, and he's going to start pushing you back. So, I'm going to start our startup sequence. Parking brake, of course, we aren't going to set it until he tells us to set it. Use some intuition there. Left and right packs are off. Engine ignition, you are setting it to either right or left. For this case, I will set it on the left. We're going to be starting the number 2 engine and monitoring instruments as it goes off. Setting this to ground, you should see the N2 start to rise. Once N2 hits 25%, we're going to pull this cutoff switch into the idle range. That will add fuel to the engine and we'll start up the engine. 25 on N2, drawing the fuel cutoff into the idle position. You can see N1 rise, and there's your temperature. Let it start up. He's now telling me to set my parking brake. I'm going to set the parking brake for now. Number 2 engine still starting. Okay, there's our flight idle set with our blue caret. We didn't exceed any temperature on the exhaust gas temp, and around 70% is good on N2. We should also check that the starter cut out and it went off. We're now going to start the number 1 engine, but first disconnect and hand signal is obviously what we want. The tow driver will drive to our front and then off to our right and hold any pins. You can confirm by just watching him do it, but for now, I'm going to be doing the startup checklist. So, number 1, we're now good for ground. That's going to be the same as the number 2 engine start. We're waiting for this to be 25% N2. Still monitoring the instruments, everything looks good. And 25% N1, or sorry, N2 for engine 1. We're good to put idle for the cutoff. Watch, make sure it doesn't hit red for the temp. And see all the indications. Nice and smooth, it's not overheating, it's not stalling, it's not doing anything bad. Okay, both engines are now on. So now we should be good to turn both Gen 1 and Gen 2 on. Next, we're going to also slap the Elect 2 on. Wait for that low pressure to go away. We're good to turn back to Gen 1 for our DC AC meter, and we can slap the probe heat on now. Anti-ice is going to be as required. It is currently 10 Celsius out, so I'm not going to turn it on while taxi. That's once again something you might have to use a little intuition on. Left and right packs, I will set them to auto. Isolation valve, we are now good to set that to auto rather than open. You can see the pressure go down because we're using that pressure for the packs. We're turning off APU bleed, and we're good to turn off the APU. Once you've done this a few times, it will help you a lot with the system knowledge of just where these panels are and generally what it's doing. Okay, we're good for the taxi checklist now. So we're going to be putting flaps to 5. So this flap handle, there are keybinds on the joysticks, but I understand that not everyone wants to memorize keybinds. So what you're going to do is grab this with your mouse, preferably from the side rather than directly on. 1, 2, 5, and then make sure it clicks in. This is it clicked in. Shifting back to the screen, you're going to want to confirm that flaps actually extend to 5. Okay, and it should give you green leading edge flaps extended and 5 is set. We're now good to turn the taxi light on, and I'll turn on the runway turnoffs to show generally what they look like off and on. This doesn't help really here. You can see left side off, on. This is press kit, so I'm just going to go ahead and keep them on, I guess. Okay, now we're going to taxi to the runway. You can double check once again after the tow driver has unpinned. You should be able to use your rudder axis on the joystick, which is just rotating it left and right, to use the tiller as well. You're going to want to do this a little, how do I say that? It's very sensitive with the tiller. So you want as minimum of input as possible. That way you aren't overturning the aircraft. Okay. I'm going to release the parking brake. On the joysticks, the trigger of the joystick should be normal brake. Okay. You can see as you rotate the gear left and right, the taxi light will move with you. We'd of course want a taxi clearance. I'm skipping that for the case that I'm by myself and I'm not going to give myself a taxi clearance. For those who have a taxiway diagram, I'm going Echo Charlie crossing runway 12 at Charlie. Okay, means I need a taxi to runway 2 and left. You guys can be pretty slow with this. I'm totally fine with you guys going slow on taxiing, especially with how sensitive things are on the stick. That way you aren't overturning, running off the end, and possibly getting stuck in the grass. Once again, it's obviously not realistic that 737's at Prescott, but Prescott is a normal airport for us, so it should be good for one of our first lessons here. While I'm taxing, I will grab my before takeoff check on my other screen. Of course, you guys as a crew will be 2 people, so you can have one taxing and one setting up the before takeoff checklist, generally. Especially once you start getting close. That way you don't have to stop, do this checklist, and then go again. That might help you guys a little. First is going to be engine start. We're going to want to set this to continuous and both. Continuous, both, continuous. Next, we're setting anti-skid to rejected takeoff. It should flash and then go back blanked. Runway turnoffs are coming off. We're going to set the strobe lights on. Yeah, I should probably look at where I'm taxing. Okay, I'm going to start extending all the landing lights. Okay, lower ECAM display. We're going to be looking at the lower ECAM, and we're going to want to make sure that there's no warnings or anything that could potentially make us reject takeoff. FMC pages, we're going to want the right side, or for this case, we're going to say the right side is pilot monitoring. We're going to set that to climb. For the left side, that's our pilot flying. He's going to have the legs up for this case. And I think I'll go through the takeoff and climb check here, but I think that's enough for this video. Past that, this is really just supposed to be configuration of aircraft. That way, if somebody gets this done faster than everyone else, or everyone's progressing faster than expected, then you guys at least have something to do. We'll of course want to take off clearance for the airport. That's kind of normal. Okay, first part of the takeoff and climb checklist is going to be setting thrust to toga. Yeah, I kind of overshot there. Once again, it's kind of sensitive on the gear, so you want to be a little careful on that. I'll line up on the center line here. No rush, it's a SEM. And obviously you guys have to look down, and not everything's keybind on the joysticks. I'm going to keep the parking brake off. I'm just going to be holding my trigger down for our normal brake. So, toga thrust. I'm going to move my camera a little to hopefully see it better. But it is this black little thing right there, the black little button. Once you click it, it will push the throttle forward, and it's armed there, because we should have already armed the auto throttle. Toga, I'm pausing for now. Shifting back to our main thing. I just clicked the toga, it's going to be moving the throttles forward. Unpause. We can see it's coming in. Throttle's coming up. And hand back on stick. You can see power indications, that's what we want to see. It wants to be where that green is. 80 knots. It's fine to be a little bad at this because of how sensitive the sticks are, so we aren't judging too much on this. V1, rotate. Okay. Positive rate, gear up. And you want to be pitching for that bugged speed as best as you can. LNAV, VNAV, I'm going to go ahead and engage Command A. Okay. V2 plus 15, we're going to set flaps to 1. Thrust should go back to climb. We just heard that happen. CLB, climb, and it's decreased the thrust a decent amount. Once they have gone up, you want to set them back to off. Okay. I keybind this, sorry. I'll pause this here. I just clicked the keybind, but if you guys don't use the keybind, you're of course going to drag this from 5 all the way up to 1. In which case you can watch it. It's gone up to 1. Thrust is climb. Once we go past the up bug, which is what we're waiting on, I'm going to zoom in a little. You can see that LNAV, or lateral navigation, is flying the plane right now. VNAV is giving us the pitch, and N1 is our power setting for climb. We've gone past the up, so we're going to drag the flaps to 0, and they should clean up. Okay, we're accelerating past the up bug, and we're gonna set lights. We're gonna wanna turn off all these landing lights. We can keep everything else pretty much on as normal. Okay, we have around 500. Let's say we've been cleared to our altitude. I'm going to drag our altitude knob. This is only if you've been cleared to climb past the altitude. Don't just slam the power back in. You can see how it wants to level off because it hit where it previously thought it was going to be leveled off in. This is the easiest way in this sim. Disengage VNAV and re-engage it, or you can end up giving it a little thrust and setting up the FMS to climb again. But for now, I'm going to disengage VNAV and re-engage VNAV. Should give us back to N1, VNAV speed. Another thing is you could have clicked N1 and it should go back to VNAV speed N1. We're above 10,000, it's good to go above 250. Okay, I'll pause this for now. Once you hit 18,000, you should hit standard here, and it will give you 29902 on your altimeter setting. It's the same for our standby instrument. You just click for standard, and same for the right side PFD. I would say this is it for this video. If you guys have any questions whatsoever, you can ask us in class, or if it's an urgent question, you can try to email us. If it's really, really urgent about an assignment or anything, go ahead and message either me or the professor.